Is the demolition of Governor Wamatangi's property a lawful enforcement, political persecution, or a mix of both legal and political conflict? Let's dive in and discuss this. In the early hours of January 13th to January 14th, 2026, excavators, bulldozers, and heavy machinery moved into a section of land near Nyayo National Stadium in Nairobi, specifically along the Douglas Wakihuru Road off Langata Road, and demolished several business premises and vehicles. These structures were reportedly linked to the Kiambu Governor Kimani Wamatangi, and they included a car wash facility, a restaurant, and a car yard and parked vehicles, and other semi-permanent structures. Now, the demolition was conducted under tight security with a heavy police presence, and residents reported blockages and disruptions to traffic in the area. Several workers and business operators were left without income, and property worth millions of Kenyan shillings were destroyed. Now, what do the authorities say? Officials, including the National Police Boss, stated the demolition was part of an exercise to assist Kenya Railways in reclaiming land that had been occupied near the railway corridor. They claimed the owner had been notified to vacate, although this is disputed. The exercise was characterized publicly as a land clearance tied to infrastructure planning, particularly relevant to space around the railway and near the future Talanta Stadium project. Now, here are the key points from official statements. First, land allegedly belongs to the Kenya Railways, which claims it was being encroached on. Secondly, security forces were present to support a repossession of that land. Third, the owners had allegedly been notified to vacate, though not in written notice form, according to the governor's claims. Nonetheless, the governor responded. Governor Wamatangi publicly condemned the demolition and framed it as first, political persecution and intimidation, suggesting the action was meant to weaken his political standing, a violation of his constitutional right to property, and fair administrative action because he claims proper legal procedures, including written notices and lawful eviction processes, were not followed. In court documents filed before the demolition, Wamatangi stated that the land has been leased to his company, Super Clean Shine Enterprises, for over 20 years. Rent was paid and acknowledged, establishing a valid tenancy agreement. The threats of eviction were made verbally without written notice, violating procedural requirements under the Land Act and constitutional protections. He had sought court orders to halt the demolition, but the excess proceeded regardless. So, was this a witch hunt or political targeting? Now, this question really boils down to two competing narratives, and so far, there is no independent judicial ruling confirming either narrative. Let's discuss the political witch hunt claim. Governor Wamatangi insists the demolition is a politically motivated attack, part of broader pressure and targeting because first, he has previously been at odds with the national government investigative agencies such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which he publicly described as politically intimidating. Secondly, he believes the demolition interferes with his ability to defend himself legally and politically. Third, his critics or aides allege that other politicians or rivals are trying to undermine his leadership and electoral prospects. However, there is no definitive evidence from court rulings or independent investigative reporting that the demolition was ordered directly by the national government as a punitive political pressure. The land enforcement explanation. Authorities and some news reports frame the demolition as first, a land repossession exercise, particularly for property alleged to be on Kenya Railways reserve land, a follow-up to previous demolitions in the same area related to the same railway land issues. Government actions elsewhere that involve clearing infrastructure corridors have had similar justifications, though critics often dispute procedures of fairness. This narrative suggests that the demolition was not personally targeted at Wamatangi alone, but part of the broader land enforcement practices. Critics have pointed out that other businesses and residents in similar circumstances have also faced demolitions in Nairobi and other areas, though opponents of Wamatangi's view see this as an enforcement rather than persecution. Let's look into the legal and procedural issues at the heart of the dispute. If the demolition was legally justified on land or public work grounds, important process questions remain that fuel the political controversy. Was proper notice given? Wamatangi claims the eviction and demolition were based on verbal threats, not formal written notices required by the Kenyan law. If true, this could mean a violation of first, the Land Act, which outlines proper eviction processes. Secondly, constitutional rights under Articles 40 and 47, regarding protection of property and fair administrative action. Was the timing fair given the court process? Wamatangi had filed a court petition seeking to stop the demolition, scheduled for hearing, yet the demolition proceeded before the matter was heard. This has raised questions about the respect for judicial process and due process rights. These procedural issues are central to whether the demolition was lawfully executed or if the action could be seen later as unlawful, regardless of political intent. Now, wider context, public perception and political climate. Kenya's political environment often sees disputes like these interpreted through political lenses, especially involving high-profile leaders. Allegations of political intimidation or witch hunts are common in controversies involving powerful figures, but perception alone does not confirm political targeting unless proven in court or by independent investigations. Many journalists and analysts emphasize that it is common for politicians and influential individuals to have mixed business interests, leading to conflicts when public land or infrastructure plans are involved. Consolidation of land and enforcement near critical infrastructure often triggers disputes between the state and the private owners, not just political opponents. At the same time, government actions have been questioned in other cases for lack of transparency or inconsistent application of procedures, shaping a climate where many Kenyan citizens are suspicious of government motives in demolitions. So, let's summarize this. Witch hunt or legitimate enforcement? Neither narrative is fully proven yet, but based on current evidence, there was a demolition of property linked to Governor Wamatangi. Secondly, the government and police said it was to support Kenya Railways in reclaiming land for infrastructural planning. Third, Wamatangi claims the action violated his constitutional rights and was politically motivated. There has been no judicial ruling confirming political targeting or vindicating either side's false claim as of the latest reporting. So what could this mean moving forward? The outcome of the court case Wamatangi filed and any further investigation into whether written notices were properly served, the legal status of the land and tenancy, whether due process was followed, will be critical to clarifying whether this was lawful enforcement, political persecution, or a mix of both legal and political conflict.